Good morning and welcome to Free Advice Friday. My name is Keri Barnum for New Shelves Books, and today we are here with a very special guest. Jacobson is the CEO of Book Award Pro, the company that leads the industry in helping authors find the perfect reviews and awards for their books. Jay's an innovator, a serial entrepreneur, and a seasoned technology executive with extensive experience in the information security, internet, and telecommunications industries. So during Jay's career, he has founded and led more than 6 technology companies and held key positions at several Fortune 500 enterprises, including American Express and AT&T. Jay has been a board member and strategic advisor to several corporations, industry groups, and universities. So Jay here, we say all this, not only to say, wow, you're awesome, we're all impressed, but also like, you know what you're talking about. Because when I talk about AI, there's a lot of like, I guess. And I think, but when you talk about AI, you actually know, or you have at least a solid understanding of what is AI.
Right. Yes, I hope so.
Well, we're excited to have you here and this opportunity. And I just want to talk about first this idea of AI being artificial intelligence. And the new craze lately has been ChatGPT. So we kind of think of ChatGPT and AI as being synonymous. They're one and the same. But I don't think that's actually true. Can you explain some of the differences of what ChatGPT is compared to what AI overall is?
Sure. So that's a really great point, and one that I think that's important. It doesn't get enough attention in the headlines. So AI, as a general term, is such a big, broad thing. It's like saying writing. Writing is a very broad term. You can write a newspaper article. You can write a book. You can write a book report when you're in school. You can write a little a text that goes on a headline. You can write a dictionary. You can write, you can write a love letter. There's so many different things that are writing, and not everything that is writing fits in the same bucket. There are vastly different styles and uses and reasons for existence. AI is very similar, that there's all kinds of different facets to it. And just to call it ChatGPT alone is the tiniest, drop in the bucket or the tip of the iceberg, I guess, depending on whether your water is melted or frozen. But the ChatGPT is one specific form of AI, and it is called generative AI. Sometimes, if a headline is looking to sound extra technical, then they'll use the full term, but it is called generative AI. And generative AI is the form of AI where computers make decisions to produce new content. And of course, generative AI is something that is real interesting to writers and real interesting in the publishing world. So I see why it gets the headlines there, but it's important to understand that, the whole baby with the bathwater scenario, just because one form of AI might be intimidating or can be used in negative ways, it can also be used in very, very positive ways. And AI as a whole is such a big thing. AI is saving lives every day. AI is involved in healthcare and medical, and we can go into some of this in scientific exploration. That AI is a huge thing in the world, and it's not just ChatGPT.
ChatGPT. So, and you specified that ChatGPT is generative. Can you tell us some of the other types of AI that we might see either in publishing or just everyday life?
Yeah. So AI has been a part of all of our lives for decades now. Whether you know it or not, you interact with AI. And when I say you, I'm talking the greater you here. I mean, everybody on this chat. If you have the ability to even join this chat, you are interacting with AI every single day. You interacted with AI to even get here this morning, whether you know it or not. So AI has been part of our lives for so long. Things like automatic fall detection for senior citizens. that uses AI technology. Things like, have you ever watched a sports game on TV and it draws the little marker on the field to show where the foul happened or something? That is AI, the ability to do that. If you have ever pulled up Netflix or social media and had something suggested to you, that is AI. If you have ever used Google Maps or any kind of GPS navigation in your car, guess what? AI. Things like, predicting weather events and hurricanes, things like predicting where viruses might mutate and how new outbreaks might happen. All of these things are AI. There are millions and millions and millions of examples in everyday life of AI. The ability to say, write me a paragraph about a little girl who went fishing into ChatGPT and have it spit out a paragraph, 50 milliseconds later. That is also AI, but that is just one small facet of a tremendously vast field.
Right. And like you said, we've been using it for a really long time. When we have an automated sequence on our newsletters, that's AI. Pretty much, would you agree that most automation is AI driven in some way?
Yeah, I think so, especially these days. I'm going to probably anger any pure technologists that may happen to be watching this, but for the sake of boiling it down for simplicity, I think we can generally consider any time that computers are making decisions, anytime that technology is making decisions, that is some way, some form of AI. It may be very rudimentary. It may be very advanced. A computer may be making a decision about how to land a rocket on the moon. It may be making a decision about, whether or not, to increase the power on your microwave when you're making popcorn. It could go either direction, doesn't matter. But when computers are making decisions in some way, in a basic sense, that is AI. And so if we were to define it in some way, that would be a far more practical and reasonable way to define it, rather than just defining it as the ability to, generate content.
Right. Now, so you're saying that our AI can make decisions, or computers are making decisions,
right.
Which of course brings us to what some people are afraid of is, are we getting close to that like iRobot stage of how do you feel like ChatGPT is just a step closer? Do you feel like we are really that close to computers taking over or having the ability to really run themselves?
Close in a practical term, or in a practical sense, no. So what the ability for computers to run themselves would be something, would be sentience, and that's the ability to be completely self-thinking. The ability to make a decision is a logic flow. The ability to make a decision is something that can be learned and programmed, but the ability to program oneself, or the ability to think for yourself, exist for yourself, be sentient, is an entirely different thing. There is, to the best of my knowledge, there is no current examples of sentient technologies. There's no examples of that. There has never been any inkling of that. We can fake it, but faking it is not the same thing as making it. And will it happen someday? If probably, I would, I think it's reasonable. Technology advances are just absolutely incredible. It's one of the reasons I love the field so much. But is it going to happen in my lifetime? No. In your lifetime, probably not. But there's a whole lot of world changing that's going to happen between now and then, if it ever does happen. But to have that be a frontline concern now for the general population, I think is putting the cart way before the horse. If you were an AI researcher or something like that, then sure, that's something to keep in mind. You keep the distant future in mind. But for us regular folks, no, I don't think that's Right,
It's
right.
still sci-fi for now.
Right. Yes, for sure.
Love it. And so we do have a question about defining chat. So when we talk of something about ChatGPT, if I'm not mistaken, it gets the name because you chat to it and it chats back. Is that correct?
Yeah. You feed it content and it feeds you a response, or you, in more technical terms, you feed it input and it gives you output, or it generates output. That's why it's called generative API, or it's not API, pardon me, AI. Getting my technical terms mixed up. So yes, you feed it input and it generates output, and you may feed it input and I feed it input, and it's going to generate slightly different outputs, because it's not just copying and pasting something, it's actually creating that content new when it feeds it back. It's learning how to create that content from other sources out there in the world, and I'm sure we want to touch on that. But it is generating that content and creating it.
Well, and let's just jump right into that elephant in the room is how does it learn? If we feed, where does the content come from? I know that you and I have talked about training AI, which is something that you sometimes do, where you're actually training AI how to respond to different things. We see it in businesses all the time. If I chat a business and get a response back, many times that's a trained AI system that has been trained to recognize certain questions. But aside from someone manually sitting there training AI, where could AI learn from?
Well, so it's important to remember that there's always somebody there training AI, at least in the beginning, and you can train it to then take in its own sources, right? So you can train it to grow beyond the manual training, but there was always somebody there. It's not just a switch that gets flipped and magically it starts going again. That would be sentience. So where does it get data from? Is anywhere on the internet, anywhere that exists, any data that is fed into it, it learns how to exist, sort of like a toddler being put into the world. It learns from the environment, from things it hears, things it sees, things it experiences. Experiences might be a stretch of a word to use in terms of AI, but it learns when you ask for something and then you don't like the result it gives you, and you ask it to refine that and change it into something else. That is an experience. It experienced that negative feedback from you that you wanted something better, and it learns from that. And next time, it's more likely to produce something that is more in line for what you like. So experiences, in the human sense, no, but experiences is still a thing. But it learns from all the content in the world. But it's important to remember, especially as writers, that this is, I'm gonna ride the line on possibly offending people here, but give me a benefit of the doubt for a moment. There are so many letters in the, and let's just say hypothetically in English. There are so many letters in the English language, and those letters can only be put together in so many different combinations that we call words. And there are only so many valid words in the English language. And those words can be put together in various combinations that we call sentences. And at some point, the total number of possible permutations are huge, but they are finite. And there's an interesting concept called cognitive bias. And this is a known scientific concept. It has nothing to do with AI. It has to do with the way that the human brain works. And that when we write a sentence, let's say we write a sentence of 20 words, and we think this is my sentence. I created that sentence from my own brain. It's brand new, it's fresh. Well, the chances are that sentence has existed in the world before. And then when you create that sentence, and then you sometime later, see AI using that sentence, you think, oh my gosh, it stole my information. It stole my content. Well, did it? I don't know. Because when this is cognitive bias, when we create something, we create our own reality, or we create our own perception into reality, I should say, that cognitive bias tells us that what we have created is more unique to us than it may actually be, in a purely scientific sense. AI doesn't magically, if you write a book and you don't put that book anywhere, AI isn't a magical fairy. It can't get into a book that you haven't fed it. It doesn't just go out onto Amazon and buy every book that exists and read it and learn from it. AI can learn from maybe your book description that is in the public domain. AI can learn from reviews about your book. AI can learn from people talking about your book, but the actual content of your book, the copyrighted data that you have produced, unless you explicitly feed that into an AI model, it doesn't exist there. But can AI wind up generating some of the same sentences that you have used in your book? Yes, absolutely. Just like those sentences may also exist in books, works, textbooks, speech transcripts, or any other anything else. Those same sentences may have existed in the past too.
Right. And so I'm gonna, since we're on the touchy subjects, I'm just gonna keep going. It almost sounds like what you're saying, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that many of us are blaming AI for copyright infringement, when in fact, it's not AI. If anything, it is the people behind AI that are choosing to feed things they didn't have the rights to into AI to train it.
Absolutely. And I can't speak to, I can speak to the technology itself. I can't speak to the people or companies behind it. I don't know. It's a vast world. But yes, the technology itself is not inherently bad. The technology itself doesn't inherently go out and try to steal data. All the technology does is go and scour the internet and look and see, and just learn from what's out there and read and digest all the content it can get its hands on, including video transcripts, right? So AI at some point is going to come along and is going to discover this video that you and I are having right now, and it is going to convert our words into text and is going to then learn from that text. And this is going to, again, feed the model. It's another data point across trillions and trillions and trillions of data points, but they all add up. And this will be another data point.
Absolutely. So I think it really comes down to, again, if the technology is not inherently bad, which I agree with, it's technology, but it's the people using it. And if people are using it illegally, I mean, this is why we're now seeing lawsuits against places like OpenAI and things like that. It's not against, I know the name's OpenAI, so we think of it as, oh, they're suing AI, but they're not. They're suing the people behind AI, because that is the people who had to feed it in. So as writers and authors, how can we be smart about the things that we openly allow in public domain and the things that maybe we don't want fed into the average AI system? What things would you avoid or do to protect yourself when using AI to make sure that, for example, if I have a book, I probably don't want to just feed the entire thing into ChatGPT, but that, so what are some things that as authors that we can just be smart about on how to use this technology, which is here? And if we don't use it, we will end up falling behind. Like, to just put a whole kibosh on it, you're going to be left behind. So how can we use it, but also be smart about our creative works to do our best to not have our copyrighted books and works used in these systems?
That's a really good question, and one that I don't know that I've got a robust answer to, but I'll do my best to provide something. So it's a brave new world, and the say I just stole from some author right there. Right, and AI is going to come along and pick up that sentence in this chat transcript and did AI steal from that author? No, it stole from me, who stole from that author, right? So it's the lines are very blurry. This is an example right here that the lines are very blurry, that just because generative AI is a relatively new thing, or at least generative AI that is useful in a common everyday sense is a relatively new thing. And so the lines haven't really been defined about how to exist in the world, what is appropriate, what is inappropriate. Companies like OpenAI, they are a reputable company. They're not some shady, underground organization. They're a reputable company. I don't know anybody over there one way or another, but they are a reputable company. And I would sincerely doubt that they're doing anything purposely illegal. But the problem is that the rules just haven't been defined, and it's such a new world, and things came on so fast that a little bit of chaos is going to exist while we, as society, as lawmakers, as politicians, as just human beings, decide what is right and what is wrong. If you've ever seen a video of when horse-drawn carriages were on the road, and then motorized automobiles were introduced onto those same roads, it is utter chaos. Cars are going all over the place. Horses are running in front of people. People are walking in front of cars because they're not used to seeing them on the road. It is just utter chaos on the roads. The cars weren't doing anything wrong. The technology of automobiles isn't anything wrong or evil. The companies behind it weren't doing anything wrong. It's just the world, it came on so quickly, and it needed a little time to adjust and kind of sort out the chaos and figure out what's right from wrong. What are the rules of the road?
What are the rules? Exactly, because now we
Yeah.
have speed limits, we have laws, you have to take a driver's test. And this, I think it's really important to realize that this is something that over the last 100 years, we have gone from not having many rules to having now, certain ages in different states that people have to be to get a license. These rules are still changing and still adapting to
Right.
technology and to humanity. So while we would love to have quick answers to what's right, what's wrong, how can we use this, we probably won't. And I've been saying this for a while, is that it will probably be years before there are clear answers of how we can legally use AI or not in copyrighted materials and book covers and art, because it's literally being figured out as we speak. And there are going to be people who do what will eventually be known as the right thing. And there's also going to be people who do something that will eventually be known as the wrong thing. And as you said, it doesn't mean they're evil. It means that there were no rules. And so they did what they thought they could, or they felt was best. And we'll figure it out, 100 years from now, they're going to be looking back at us and say, yeah, remember when AI just became more of a hot topic? Now we've got all these rules and look at us now. So
Yeah, and I think that it's important. It's a tough time in the sense of being an author in a world where AI is just coming, or generative AI is just coming into its own. That's a tough time, because on the one hand, as you had said, Keri, if you ignore AI entirely and just say, I'm not going to touch it, well, you get left behind, because it is here, it is changing the world, and there's no avoiding it. But at the same time, if you dive into the deep end head first without, without thinking about what you're doing, then you also could expose yourself to that undefined chaos, because the rules of the road haven't been defined yet. And so it's important to almost consider, just like any of your work that you may take, you don't take your entire book content and post it on Facebook, right? And you wouldn't be surprised if somebody ripped you off if you just posted your whole book on Facebook. The same is true here. Just kind of think about what you're doing, and just remember that AI is there to digest content, just like people reading a Facebook wall are there to digest the content that's posted there. And so if you don't want it used, don't post it. That doesn't mean you can't sell your book online. It just means don't post the content of it.
right. And I do have a question, and I have heard kind of in the past, as far as how to know what's safe or not. As authors, a lot of us use Pro Writing Aid, Grammarly, different tools that help our writing be better. It helps our writing evolve. And so I have heard that if it's a free tool, chances are that it is scraping your content, that you're paying with your content essentially when you're using a free tool. But if it's a paid tool, many of those options do have protections for copyright and authors. Is that your experience, or do you have tips for how to know if a tool is safe to use as an author, or when maybe to dig it a little bit deeper into it before using it?
Yeah, that's a great question. There's a saying in the information security space, which is part of my background, that if you are not, I want to get this right, if you're not paying for the product, you are the product. Meaning that the content that you generate, where your eyeballs are doing, what you're doing, just like when you search Google, you don't pay for Google, but Google is watching everything that you do, and they are observing your behaviors, and they're using that to sell more ads, to train their AI, to do their business. Your actions are the product. You're paying for it with your own privacy, with your own data. And the same is true of most social media and things like that. You are paying for it with your data, if not your dollars. So in terms of technology tools in the publishing space, as an author, I think the most prudent option would be simply just ask the company, right? I can't speak to ProWriting Aid. I can't speak to other ones. At Book Award Pro, I can speak to that we do have a free level of service, and we don't scrape and sell content. Our free level of service is something, just speaking very bluntly, we want people to be able to get value out of it and to say, wow, this is a great tool for my book. And I'm going to now start paying to get some of these more advanced features. So the free level of service for us, we don't sell your content. We're using it as a marketing tool. And it's the ability to get a little bit for free to entice you, hopefully, to upgrade. And if you don't, then that's okay too. But we're not selling anything in the back end. What we sell on the front end is 100% of our business and our revenue. But someone could ask that. People do ask us that. We get support messages asking us, what happens with my data if I'm just using your free plan? And that's a perfectly valid question. And any company who's not willing to answer that question in a very clear, direct way, that would probably be a red flag. But someone like ProWriting Aid, or someone like, Draft Digital, or, things like that, I can't speak for their business models, but I can definitely say that if you ask them that question, I would bet you're going to get a pretty clear, concise, straightforward answer, and then you can make a decision whether or not that's something you want to use or not.
Right. And that's really smart. I love the idea. And essentially what you said, that, you are paying one way or another. So know how that is. If you're using a free online tool, they are absolutely going to be using your content. And most of them, somewhere very small on their page, will say that exact thing, that they are essentially using all of the information that you input. In the space of ethical use, I'd love to know your thoughts on ethical and unethical use of AI. So as authors, if I was to go on to some type of AI, now this is generative AI, but if I was to go on to something and say, write me something in the voice of Stephen King,
okay,
versus, saying, I would like to automate my emails, where do you think we will either, not only just personally, but where do you think the line will fall for ethical and unethical use?
That's a really good question. So I think, and I think this is going, at this point, there are no accepted social norms, right? We don't have social conventions that tells us what is right and wrong here. And so it's a great discussion to have, but it's a discussion that's not going to happen on a, in a single setting. And it's going to happen in a very big way over a long period of time. The idea of saying, I want you to, respond to this email for me, write some content that's going to respond to this email for me, or even write some content that is in the voice and tone of Jay Jacobson. Well, that's me, right? Is that wrong? But if I were to say, write some content that's in the voice and tone of Keri Barnum, well, is that wrong? What's the difference? The difference, one is you, one is me, but fundamentally it's boiling down to generate some content in somebody's voice, whether that voice is you or not. And so that's a philosophical question of, which one is right, which one is wrong, both, neither, some of each. I don't know. In the sense of, from an author, I might say, well, Stephen King is a very successful author. He knows how to say things in a way that makes a great story. And storytelling, authorship, whether fiction, nonfiction, doesn't matter. Authorship is about storytelling. Fundamentally, this is what it's all about. And is it wrong to learn from somebody who's a great storyteller and then try to apply some of those learnings into your own writing? Is that wrong? I can argue either way on that, right? I think if I take it just from the sense of learn from a great storyteller and apply those into your own writing, that to me sounds like something that's not wrong at all. That sounds like a very smart move. That's how a writer, a good writer becomes a great writer, is learning and mistakes. Yet to say, create me some content that's in the voice of Stephen King, is that pushing that line too far? It's fundamentally the exact same thing, but just pushing the line a little further. And is that over the line between right and wrong or not? That's not for me to say. That's for society to say.
Society and the courts. And I think it's also in the use of it. If I say, create me something in the voice of Stephen King so I can learn from it and write my own, that's much different than saying, write me a novel in the voice of Stephen King, and then I try to publish it as my own. I think and I think that, that's something that society's trying to figure out. And while we try to figure that out, are there tools? Actually, I'll go back a step. As far as content that is being generated, is it safe to assume that whatever's being generated is not wholly original, or is it truly originally generated by AI?
So my first question, which is my first question is there any such thing as wholly, truly original content? If we look across, all of history of everything that humans have ever written, said, or done, is there anything wholly original anymore? Probably. The answer is yes, but probably not as much as we might think. But to directly answer your question, it is truly original in the sense that AI has learned from, or not AI, generative AI has learned from all of the input that it has received, and that it is generating something entirely new. Is that something entirely new influenced, biased, based on something that it learned? Well, yes, but when I write something entirely new, it's also influenced, biased, and based on the things that I have learned. And so, AI generating something entirely new is no different than Jay or Keri generating something entirely new. The difference is Jay and Keri have a sense of right and wrong. And AI is just a computer. It only has the senses that it's programmed with. And we keep coming back to the what is right and wrong hasn't yet been defined. And so, yes, AI might step over the line sometimes. Most of the time, probably not on purpose. But yeah, it could definitely happen. But yes, it is wholly, entirely new original content.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's really interesting how you said that, like, what you output is literally what you input. What I learn about marketing and what I share in Free Advice Fridays is what some I learned myself by working in it and doing it, but a lot of it is, oh, hey guys, I heard that Dave Chesson said this and I went and learned that, or Publishers Marketplace said that. So a lot of it is regenerating what I heard. And I think that's a really good point about it's really ultimately, I think, if anything, more responsibility is put on the people, or should be on the people that are using it versus anything else. Because a butter knife is not necessarily dangerous unless I choose to use it in a way that makes it dangerous. So I think it's all about ultimately humanity. And I think that's the struggle too, is because we don't always like the rules and we bend
That's
them.
right. Yeah, you bring up a great point. An analogy that I like to use is you can use a hammer to build a house, you can also use a hammer to commit great crimes. It's the exact same tool. The problem isn't the tool, the problem is how you use it. And AI can in a lot of ways be no different. In the tool itself is not inherently evil. The tool itself isn't doing anything wrong, but it's how you use it. And if you take AI generated content, no matter when, where, or how it came from, if you take AI generated content and then put it in the world and claim it as your own, then the AI might have stole from somebody, but guess what? You just stole from the AI also, right? So both, and the difference is the AI didn't know what it did was wrong. You knew what you did was wrong. But if you take some AI generated content, no matter whether it was too heavily influenced by somebody else or not, if you take some AI generated content and you learn from that, and you say, "Ooh, that's an interesting way of expressing that story. That's an interesting way of explaining that thought." And you learn from that, and then you write your own book, you write your own paragraph, your own sentence, based on what you have learned, then that's not wrong. That's no different than you having gone and reading the source material yourself, learning from it, and then creating your own content based on it. That's how we as humans learn and operate in all cases.
Everything and all things until rules and laws are put in place, and then that's the defining line. Now we've talked a lot about kind of the ethics of AI, but what are some ways that authors either have been or can benefit from AI in their everyday practices? What are some ways that you use it, or that you would recommend that authors look into to make their lives easier, to use AI to their advantage and to maybe explore it in a more positive way?
Yeah, so that's really good. There's some great opportunities out there. So things like you had mentioned a couple already, like Grammarly, right? Grammarly is effectively an AI editor in a lot of ways, and that is that is a great tool that is able to learn from. Is it perfect? No, but it is a great tool that is able to learn from the way that human speech and the way that humans construct sentences and the way that we write things evolves over time, and it changes. There are different trends in how sentences are constructed and how we express ourselves and how we write things. And Grammarly is able to learn from that and write modern sentences or write historical sentences that sound old, write something futuristic that to us sounds sounds like it came from the future. That's pretty cool. AI can do stuff like that. The past couple of weeks, a lot of my own personal time has been spent training AI models about helping authors find the right awards and reviews for their book, and matching up, taking all the data about a book and then finding exactly what is the right award or review that is going to be favorable and positive for this author. And that is AI models. Authors use AI all the time. If you've ever gone and maybe generated a photo for like a sample photo for the cover of your book, or generated a book cover, or if you've used Photoshop to touch up an existing picture and overlay some text on top of it that looks like it's floating on top of the picture. AI was used in that model to get the text looking just right, that is floating on top of the lake or whatever the photograph happens to be. There's all kinds of ways in if you're looking at formatting your book and doing the layout, interior design of how is the book laid out. AI will come into play for that, and there's great tools for that as well. So there's the technology in the publishing industry is something that is really a great thing, and I think it's the publishing industry has been around so long that there's a lot of legacy tools out there, and there's so much available out there for publishers and authors. And just more recently, some of those technologies are getting into the hands directly of authors. Some of those capabilities are getting into the hands of authors. And I think that's such a powerful time. Just like, it's a scary time, but it's also a very powerful time.
Yeah. And I think, just some of the things, you guys, I really started when I knew Jay was going to come chat with us. I started to think about some of the ways that I guarantee you, every one of you, if you've published a book, have used AI. For example, if you've uploaded a book to KDP, AI auto checks your book to ensure that your margins are in line, so that your ISBN matches your cover. That's AI. If you've uploaded to Ingram Spark, the same thing. When they're checking and they say, hey, your file has a color that's not, necessarily, that's a form of AI that's been trained to recognize these things. If you have passwords that you save somewhere and it automatically fills it, that's a form of an AI system. So when we talk about AI, and I think this is an overarching theme of what we've talked about today, is that AI has become synonymous with the drama that's going on in the world, rather than looking at as AI really has been used. And just going back to KDP, those files have been automatically checked for a really long time. We're talking years and years. And so I think that it's very similar. And Tara's specifying the difference between software and AI. So can you, Jay, as someone in the industry, kind of differentiate a little bit more between software and AI? And does all software or most software use AI inherently?
Inherently, no. So software is something that programs a computer to be able to take some input and produce some output. Whether it's you press the C button on your keyboard, and in your word processor, the letter C appears on the screen. That's got nothing to do with AI. That is software. The ability to the ability to click the send button on your email and have that go and fly across the internet. I'll save you the explanation of how that happens and land in somebody else's inbox. I guess spam filtering would be a form of AI along the way, but let's leave that out. Just the ability to click that send button and have it appear in somebody else's inbox, that is software, not AI. But when it comes down to computers making decisions about should this happen or should this not happen? When it comes down to computers learning from, well, this happened 10 times in the past and it was okay. So now that this exact same scenario is happening again, is it okay or is it not? And it probably is, because the last 10 times were good. So this one's good too. And spam filtering or junk mail filtering is a great example of that. How does it know when to put one in the junk folder and when to put one in the inbox? AI is an example of the kind of software that is making that decision. So not all software is AI, but all AI is software. Software is just the general term for programming a computer or programming a computing device to be able to have input and output.
Okay. And I think that's important too, is, to realize those things. But I do think there's so much crossover. There's so much crossover.
Yes.
And I think what we've been running into a lot with AI in general is that a little learning is a dangerous thing, that we know there's a lawsuit and people have been using AI inappropriately for copyright. So we're all up in arms instead of really learning the fine-tuned details of, no, there is some ways to use AI that may be ethical or that may be very normal in our everyday lives. I know in the publishing industry, of course, it's all tied up in courts right now, right? And someone did bring up about that, the court case where an artist had used Midjourney, which is an AI software to create a cover, and that lawsuit against that Midjourney cover, that author lost the case because the judge ruled that AI has no intellectual property rights and only humans do. So now what we're seeing in courts is we're seeing, okay, we've made a law, and this is kind of what we're talking about with the cars, how it became, we made one law, but now there's lots of things in between. So now what we're seeing in courts is we're seeing where, okay, well, if I use AI, but change it a lot, if I start with AI and use it to inspire me, or I'm altering it quite a bit, then is it mined copyright? And again, we don't know the answers yet. It's still in courts, and it's going to be in courts for a long time. Knowing how the court system works, it's going to be in courts for a long time. But ultimately, I think it stems back to, you know what's right and wrong. You should follow your own ethics and gut for what's right and wrong. If you feel it's wrong, especially when something that may have a blurred line, well, then don't cross that line. That's your own conscience. That's your own, your own standard. And that, I think there's a lot of things in life that maybe aren't illegal, but I wouldn't do them. And so I think that's kind of one of the things that's so hard for us to understand, is we want black and white here, and there's no black and white yet. There's a lot of gray.
This reminds me a lot of back in the, I don't know, maybe 70s, but definitely in the 80s, when things like digital design and graphic design started becoming a thing. Computers and technology had advanced enough to be able to manipulate photographs and to be able to create art that wasn't just little blocky pixels, but actually looked like a painting, actually looked like an illustration or a drawing. And there was a lot of debate and a lot of concern of, is graphic design that is produced digitally on a computer, a human is sitting there doing it. This is not an AI discussion, but a human is sitting there drawing it. But when you take your to move it forward into more modern terms, if you take your iPad and you draw a picture of a flower, versus if you take a pencil and a piece of paper and you draw a picture of a flower, you produce both of those. And these days, we would both say that those are original works of art, right? You as a human produce both of those. But back then, when this was all a new thing on the scene, the argument was that the one that you produced with a pencil and paper was real. The one that you produced on the iPads didn't exist then, but the one you produced on a computer was not a work of art. It had no validity. It was not real art. And that, that's something that we have learned, and we've, figured out over time that, whether you produce it on a canvas with a paintbrush or whether you produce it on an iPad, you are still producing art. It's still a work of art either way, whether it's an illustration, whether it's modifying a photo, whether it's, whatever it happens to be, it's a work of art either way. And AI in the terms of generating content is going to go through that exact same process of figuring out what's right and wrong.
Right. And it's, again, I'm just going to keep stressing this. It's going to take a really long time.
Yes.
because that's how courts move, and that is how also getting used to the idea of things. Yeah, it's how culture moves. And I will honestly say that if you talk to someone 20 years younger than yourself about AI, they will have vastly different ideas, because they were younger when the idea of AI or certain aspects of it were normal. So for those of us who are a little bit older, this is new, and it feels, we fear change in some ways. It feels uncomfortable. But if you go and you ask a teenager now about AI and things like that, they're just like, yeah, it's fantastic. I mean, there's so many ways to use it, because they are embracing it as it comes, rather than having these preconceived ideas and very much responding from that idea of what they know and are comfortable with, which I think is just fascinating.
Yeah, I think somebody who's been an adult in a non-AI world might be looking at this and think, well, this is going to take my job. If I'm an editor and if my job is a book editor, and I look at this and saying, wow, fast forward, a few more years, AI is getting better and better and better at being an editor. Is there a future here where there's no such thing as human editors anymore? We don't have the time to go into that, go down that rabbit hole. But never underestimate technology, right? Technology goes in fascinating ways. It's not too long ago that we would have said there's no such thing as a computer being able to land a rocket, and yet nowadays SpaceX does it every day. AI lands rockets every single day, all on its own. And so an editor, the ability for an editor to understand nuance in writing and the ability for an AI to learn that, that future very well may exist, not today, not tomorrow, not the day after that, but that future very well may exist, and someone may be fearful of it. At the same time, someone who, like a teenager today, who has only existed in an AI world, they're not going to be so fearful of it. That's not something that really occurs to them, and that's not something that feels like a global shift to them. It doesn't feel like a shift in the way that their world works and operates. And so, somebody would have said, 400 years ago, somebody would have said, can computers ever do typesetting? No, of course. Humans need to get the letters out of the box, and humans need to lay the type on the printing press and do it. A machine can never do that. A machine doesn't know what letters are, and yet we are. The idea of somebody manually doing a typesetting today, that's very quaint. But I bet there's not a lot of people manually doing typesetting.
And you touched on something that is a very touchy topic, and this will be one of our last questions because we are kind of at the end, but do you think that AI or robots will take over human jobs?
Absolutely. Well, that's what technology does. But that's not to mean it's necessarily a negative thing. Should the entire world of publishing still exist on manual typesetting? I don't think any of us would say, that's an interesting thing, in that art and that craft should still exist, and it still does. But should that be the only way that every single book is ever published? That would vastly hold back. The world of self-publishing wouldn't even exist if every book had to be manually typeset. And so should people who drive horse-drawn carriages, should that be the main, the main way of getting people around? Yes, it's a very quaint thing, a nice carriage ride through the park, and that art should still exist, and it still does. But should that be, should everybody who drives a car be driving horse-drawn carriages too? Those jobs will go away. Jobs will change. Society will shift and will change, and it's a good thing, because it also creates tons and tons of new jobs and new opportunities. Things, most of the jobs that we know today in the technology sector didn't even exist 50 years ago. And so, for all of these jobs and all of these, gainful, respectable methods of employment, so many of those job titles didn't even exist, 50 years ago. So it destroys, but it also creates, and that's what technology does. It's called advancement.
Right. And I think that as long as we embrace it to at least some extent, that is what it is. It's about staying relevant by being open and embracing, because technology will in some ways take away jobs, but it will also give jobs. It will change jobs. And in some ways, it'll make our lives easier. I mean, I heard someone kind of expand that the hope is that eventually technology does expand to take more responsibility off of humans so that we can create more. So we have more time to create and enjoy. And wouldn't that kind of be amazing on the flip side of kind of thinking at things rather than being so stuck in the idea that, oh, it's going to take something away, right? But what can it give? And so as authors and publishers and professionals here, I can see where it's scary, but I also think that the education that you have given us today and that we're learning is so powerful and valuable, because if we refuse to learn, then we're not going to be useful anymore. We won't have jobs. We won't have a place anymore. So by learning and being open, but also really thinking for ourselves, what's ethical, what are we willing to do and not do, and being part of not just crying and being fearful about what's happening, but being part of finding solutions that work ethically, I think is the future. And that's how we can be helpful moving forward in this industry.
Agreed. Yes, society and culture is growing and evolving. We don't have to give up the things that are important to us. We infuse those into the future. We infuse those into the way that we are growing and evolving. And we leave behind the drudgery that we don't want to do anymore, and we infuse the things that we love into the future that we're creating every day. And it doesn't have to be. It can be intimidating, but it's not always. It's not necessarily a bad thing.
Absolutely. Well, Jay, thank you for coming and taking your time with us and answering all of our questions. I know I put you on the spot a couple of times. I'd like to say I'm sorry, but I'm not. So I know you, of course, are the CEO behind Book Award Pro. So if people wanted to kind of learn more about you, Book Award Pro, and the AI that fuels Book Award Pro, best website would just be bookawardpro.com.
Absolutely. Yeah. Bookawardpro.com is where you find us. We're all about helping authors find precisely the right awards and reviews for their books.
It's an awesome website. I use it, you guys. So go check it out. Thank you for being here. Next week, we will have Wendy Jones here to talk about social media, the best way to get the most out of your time on social media. So join us back here next week, 10 a.m. Eastern. Thank you for being here and have a fabulous weekend. Bye, everybody.
Thank you so much, Keri. Bye, everybody.